5 simple mistakes, 5 simple solutions.
These brothers my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, now I gotta roll with ice. These brothers my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, now I gotta roll with ice.
Hey guys, how's it going? This is Paul with Spheric Reptiles, and I'm so glad that you tuned in today. This will be a quick message. I promise only 5 simple things that, it's a lot. If you're a new keeper of reptiles, this is something that you could probably use or just to be mindful of and setting your patterns for the future. If you watch some of my earlier videos, I always talk about establishing patterns and writing things down, making a plan. And that way you can have success, because when there's a need of information, it's better to go ahead and have something mapped out of what you're doing, so that if you're trying to look for a solution, it's easier just to hand it over or email it or do something like that, and someone can actually help you with your situation and get you back to having a good time with your reptile. Today I brought Daisy, our fire clown. She's going through that growth phase that I've talked about. She's about 800 something grams, and now she's going into her adulthood. And you can see her face, and I'll try to zoom in on this, is about to go through a change to where it's going to get a little bit bigger than it was at the juvenile stage. And that's about the time that their entire body structure starts to change, and she becomes a young woman, so a young woman snake, I guess. So she's off food, so she hasn't eaten. This is the 2nd week, but I'm not worried about it because she's healthy. But I only know that because I'm making sure that I check the box on those 5 simple things, right? I'll make sure to take care of all of the essential things, and that's what this video is for. So this is Daisy, and she's pretty big. We bought her from Rice Reptiles, Billy and Dawn. So, it's been about a year and a half now, so she's about to go through that final step to where we can actually pair her up to our planned breeding. So the number one thing people do is they have improper enclosure setups. So that's the number one thing that I see when I'm looking on Facebook or talking to people or brand new keepers, and they want a snake. They desperately do want a snake. And then, I'm like, well, you wouldn't buy a fish without a fish tank, right? So the same thing should hold true for snakes or reptiles. You shouldn't buy a reptile or an amphibian or any animal without having the proper setup already in mind. So either the cage is too little, which the animal just doesn't have a very good chance of survival in, or it's too big. And what I mean by too big, nothing is really too big, because really no matter what we get them, it will be too small compared to their normal habitat range, right? But if you get them a super large enclosure, like, so if I were to put Daisy right here in a 4x2x2 enclosure, that's a huge enclosure with nowhere to hide, she would get really stressed out and things like that. And so that wouldn't be good either. Another thing that I see people do is they have heat sources without thermostats. So they'll either have no heat, and you can do that with some reptile species and some snake species as well, because snakes are reptiles, right? Yeah, and even some amphibians. But if you must make sure that you have a thermostat set to the appropriate temperature for the heat, as well as you got to maintain humidity for these animals that require that humidity. Because if you don't have them both for an animal, like if they need heat and humidity, then that animal could actually perish immaturely. I mean, you would never even know it. It might develop a respiratory infection. It might not. It might just kick the bucket and die, or what do people say? Pass away? Yeah, or pass away. For number 2, it's the wrong diet. So the wrong diet could be a couple of things. So it could be either too many insects. It could be not putting calcium on the insects. It could be an inappropriate size animal that you're feeding, or feeding too much to then. So what happens in all of the cases is, if you feed, like, say, a bearded dragon just straight crickets all the time, and the crickets aren't gut loaded, they don't have calcium, and there's some other things that the bearded dragon needs, but more importantly, all animals need food stuff for energy, right? So if they can't get the food stuff, they can't make the energy, they can't grow the protein, they can't grow the nothing, no scales, no animals. So that's a thing that you would really have to think about, is gut loading your animals, or making sure that they have proper nutrition, and don't feed too many. Like, a lot of these animals don't just have oversupply of food, right? So, and that applies to ball pythons or any other snake species or any reptile species pretty much. You can overfeed them, especially if they are taking animals all the time. Because if we think about these animals in the wild, they come across prey items, right? Or else they would cease to exist. And the prey items are actually the the supply of the demand, right? So they continue to reproduce so that other animals can, feed upon them. And that's how it's designed for nature. But also, you don't want your animal to get overweight and, become obese either. So, number three on the list, I think, is the one that's most common with snake species and maybe bearded dragon species. Any animal that people love to hold. You see them walking around reptile shows with them or out in public. And for some of the animals, they get acclimated and they love it, but that is overhandling. Um, our snakes, we have a lot of snakes, so I typically try to hold about 3 or 4 snakes a day, and if not, I try to put them out when I'm cleaning their cage so that they can crawl around, get some enrichment. We got pack and plays for them. We got other things for them to just get that enrichment. But the number one thing I'm not doing is outside of shooting these videos, is they're not in front of bright lights, which is why they're always trying to move away. But the other thing is that if you hold them too much, they could get stressed out, especially if you got a new snake. If you bring a new snake home and the snake hasn't had a chance to get acclimated to its new surroundings, new smells, new vibrations, new way of feeding, new people, new voices, all this stuff, because they can't hear, but they can feel. They can feel vibrations up under their body and through their bones, on their jaws, and in their skeletal system. So you really want to take time and work it in, work at holding your animal. Don't just go all the way out and start holding your animal for 3 hours. Like, you can't watch a whole movie and hold your snake. I'm shooting this video, and after this, I'm going to put her right back up. I'll mist her cage down, check it again, and then just, let her be for the next 6 days or so, other than changing her water. You don't want to stress them out by over holding them. And the way that you'll notice that is they'll lose their appetite, they'll lose weight, they'll hiss, they'll try to strike at you. That's how you can tell if an animal is stressed out. It's the same no matter what the animal species is. I mean, it can even be your girl, right, Lynn? Like, she could strike out at me, or your dog or your cat could strike out at you. Lynn never strikes out at me. I'm just kidding, guys. If you've ever met her, you know she wouldn't hurt anybody. I mean, she is like the Mother Teresa. Well, I'm not going to say that, but she is very, very nice and very, very kind-hearted. So, all right. Yeah. Number 4, and this is what I always say: research, research, research. Do research, guys. Please, 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 please do research on these animals before you acquire them, because there are a lot of things that exist in their native environments that still carry over, even though we're breeding them in captivity. So, as the case with ball pythons, they've been bred in captivity for a long time now. So that's how we have all these different mutations in the pattern morphs. The incomplete dominant and the co-dominant, like the scaleless head. We got all these different pattern morphs, recessive traits and things like that. But at the end of the day, guys, do research. Research what the temperature is like in their native habitat. Research what the climate's like. So the reason I say this, it sounds crazy, but there's a big push for bioactive, right? And I see people at shows and just buying bioactives when I go to the reptile store all the time. And every now and then we get comments on bioactive setups. And the number one thing I see is that people want to make all of their bioactive enclosures like plant vivariums, which are humid environments. So that doesn't work well with all animals. So if you have an animal from an arid area, like any of the gamma, so that's all the bearded dragons, uromastyx, those type of animals, they're not going to do well in a high humidity environment. They really don't even have access to water like that, except for the morning dew. So if you're going to do anything for those animals, just mist them down on their nose or mist down the cages slightly before, but it needs to have that appropriate temperature, like in number 1. But also, just do your research, guys. Research when's winter, when is the summer, so what's the temperature range like there? If you want to do degrees Celsius or degrees Fahrenheit, I don't care. Just make sure that you nail that, because that's the best way to keep your animal free from illness and free from stress. Number 5, and I think this one is equally important, is I see a lot of people neglecting their regular health monitoring. I think I'm saying that right. Not a monitor like a lizard, but to actually monitor. This is spelled the same, right? But it's one of those words that has different meanings. But and it's hard for me to say. But that's what you want to do, guys. You want to weigh your snakes once a month. You want to listen and see if you hear any type of raspiness. You want to feel their bodies, like along their spines and make sure that there's nothing wrong. You want to look at their faces to make sure if you're feeding live animals that nothing's biting them. You want to check their scales out for any type of mites or infestations. You want to check out the sheds for the same thing because the mites will still be in the sheds. You also want to look at the feces to see if there's anything crawling around in there. Now, if you leave it there for a couple of days, they're eating protein, so it will have worms. That doesn't mean that your animal is infected. That just means that the poop is what it is. It's a living thing because it comes from a living source. So things live in that. There's bacteria and other stuff that the animals eat. But also, you want to make sure that you are using a temperature gun. And I mean, just everything that you can possibly do. And none of these things cost a lot. The only thing that costs a lot, I think, are the enclosures and the animals. And, that's, I think the best thing you can do is do regular checkups. So what we do is we weigh our snakes, and when we feed them, we check them, we hold them once a week. We do I just go around in order and just start grabbing them out. The hatchlings get held a little bit more because they're like babies, and when they eat, they poop. So I get to check them out a lot more. And so in a sense, that gets them used to being handled since they're, being raised by us. But hey guys, I think that's it. Just 5 things that you can do, or maybe you can stop doing. And if you're doing the right things, hey, congratulations. I really do applaud you for doing the research and making sure that your animal is in the most optimal conditions that it can be in. Hey, on a bigger note, by the end of this year, we will be trying to launch our Morph Market page. So it looks like we're going to have enough animals to actually put up a page. So I'm excited about that. I'll give you guys more information as that comes around. But in the meantime, please like, comment, and subscribe about this video. Let me know if this is the type of content that you like. If not, I can switch gears because as far as science goes, I can go as deep as you want to go. But this was just a nice video. But if nothing else, guys, enjoy the time that you spend with your reptiles and enjoy the time that you have with your family. Thank you.